Jesus paid it all to him I owe. All to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, oh, but he washed me white as snow.
Amen. Okay, friends, so let's begin. God, we love you so much. We're so grateful for this day. We're grateful for Liz, grateful for her courage. We're grateful for her journey. We're grateful for your presence in her life and in our lives. We ask you to fill us with your wisdom, your light, and your love. So recently I read a book. I read a book entitled Family Properties. Anybody ever read that book? It's a book about race, real estate, and the exploitation of Black urban America. It's a monumental piece of history, this book. It tells of racism and real estate, politics, and finance. And it takes us through a journey of understanding the forces of these things that converge to transform urban America. Burrell Satter identifies in this book the true causes of the city's Black slums and the ruin of urban neighborhoods throughout the country, not as some have argued because of Black pathology or white flight or the culture of poverty, but a widespread and an institutionalized system of legal and financial exploitation. Isn't that something? In Sadler's riveting account of a city in crisis, in Chicago in the 1960s, there were unscrupulous lawyers, slumlords, speculators who pitched against religious reformers and community organizers and an impassioned attorney who launched a crusade against the profiteers, the people who were profiting on the backs of the vulnerable. The author's father, his name was Mark. At the heart of the struggles, he says, stood the Black migrant who had left the South with its legacy of sharecropping. And suddenly they found themselves caught in a new kind of debt peonage. Everyone was profiting off the backs of their financial struggles, pretty much like what's happening today, only with a new twist. Blacks from the South took their savings and they would purchase these properties that would pass inspection enough for them to go through with the sale. But then shortly after the sale, they would begin receiving violation notices from the city that many, many things needed to be fixed, and they would be in the thousands of dollars, and they had to fix them within a certain time period or they would foreclose on their houses. Thousands of Blacks lost their homes through this kind of collusion, and their life savings was gone, wiped out, thinking that they were buying property that was livable and primed to give them an economic floor, only to find out that they were becoming the targets of financial exploitation designed to take their money and push them out so they can make new money off of new victims who moved into the new properties. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. These properties subsequently would change hands many, many times, being sold multiple times to new unsuspecting victims. The banks, the profiteers, the lawyers, the investors got rich off the backs of the vulnerable. And Sadler in this book shows these interlocking forces at work in the oppression of people of color. The discriminatory practices of the banking industry, the federal policies that created the country's shameful dual housing market, the economic anxiety that fueled the violence, and the tempting profits to be made by preying on the city's most vulnerable population. And so today, that was 1960s. Today is 2017. And we're facing a new crisis of housing exploitation that has brought us together asking ourselves, what, if anything, does God think about the continuation of the wrongs of our past, attempting to catch up with us now with our present circumstance? Does the scriptures have anything to say to us about where we are today? Well, in the gospel, we have a mother, and she is quite ambitious. And so she has her own ideas about the use of power. She sees Jesus in this powerful position of authority. And she mistakenly, like sometimes we do in this world, sometimes believes that this kind of authority is to be sought after for personal gain. Because that's what you use power for. You have power and you get stuff, right? And you get gain. And then, you go higher and you're up there and people are down there. And so she thought that she was on the right track. So she wanted Jesus to help her sons to personally benefit, regardless of who else it would impact, to be in charge, to gain notoriety and opportunity to wield power at will. But Jesus will give her and her sons a lesson in God's vision and understanding of power tonight and greatness. She knows that the top spot is taken. Jesus has it. But there's 2 more spots that aren't taken. There's spot number 2 and there's spot number 3. And she's got 2 sons. And so she wants Jesus to reserve these places of power and influence for them. Jesus answers her in this gospel by letting them know that they really don't know what they're asking for. Sometimes we really often don't know what we're asking for when we desire what we think is greener on the other side. We underestimate sometimes what it took for people to get where they are because they don't look like what they've been through. Look at Liz, she don't look like what she's been through. My Lord, but if she could tell the whole story. Jesus earned the position that he was in. This mother and these sons didn't understand it. Nobody gave it to him. He earned it by using his power, not to oppress, not to exploit, not to take advantage of, but to serve. And that is what we're asked to do too, to serve, not to lord over people, not to exploit them for personal gain, like many of our banks and our institutions are doing, not to showcase how great we are, but to simply serve the least, from the least to the greatest, that God might be glorified. And that is what Jesus is asking in this gospel today, because that is what power looks like. Real power looks like service. Jesus asked the question, can you drink from the cup from which I drink from? What cup? Can you drink from the cup of love in the face of rejection and keep going? Can you drink from the cup of having your name scandalized and having people misrepresent and misunderstand you and forgive them? Can you drink from the cup of being arrested and mocked and beaten and mistreated because you have a vision for the world that is about equity, that is about justice, that is about compassion? And sometimes it feels like you're the only one that understands that. But this vision of Jesus wasn't just for the church. It was for the world. And Jesus understood that. He was sending these disciples out to change a world. And a church was in the world. But the whole world, the financial world, the economic world, the urban centers, the suburban outskirts, everywhere, Jesus came to shake the world up just as we are asked to do today. To call the world to its better angels, to its appropriate use of power, to serve. And so he asked this question of these 2 brothers. Can you follow me in my footsteps and keep going until the arc bends towards justice in the face of adversity? And I think he would ask us that too. We may not get there in 1 try. We may not get there in 2 tries. But can we keep going? Because the arc is bending towards justice. And Jesus is just looking for people who will keep going, who will keep standing. And so he asked the question of these brothers. And they replied to Jesus, yeah, we can drink from the cup. And he concedes, not only can you, but you will. And they're ready. They're ready to serve. But serving for a more powerful position on his right or his left is not in the cards for them. It is not, Jesus said, it's not for me to give you. It is God who elevates us. It is God who decides our position. It is God who opens doors that no one can close and closes doors that no one can open. And as the other disciples get wound up that these brothers are trying to outmaneuver them in the power ranks, they become disturbed because they do think that power and some level of oppressive force could possibly go together. It's the big myth. They too are wrong. To be on Team Jesus is not to ascribe to violence or oppression or subjugation or to wield power. To be on Team Jesus is to walk with one another, to share power, to call for accountability, to work for justice, to stand up for what is right, just like you're doing tonight. To know that servitude is the way towards greatness. And that is what is happening right now. You've come out to serve our sister Liz. You've come out to serve God, to stand in solidarity with her plight, to pray, to believe God, to fight this battle, to hold injustice accountable through our faith. Jesus makes a stark reminder in this gospel tonight when he says he is the example to follow, to take our eyes off of what the world is doing. That he did not come into the world to be served, but to serve, to give his life as a ransom for many. And see, Jesus wanted us to know that we are never alone in these battles of life. It might look like just a few of us, but there are angels standing with us that we can't even see, fighting the battle with us. And that is why we can stand tall and we can declare what the Apostle Paul said in this first reading, which I absolutely love. It's what we can declare when trouble comes. He says, brothers and sisters, hold this treasure of Christ in our earthen vessels, that the surpassing power may be of God and not from us. Yeah, we may be afflicted in every way, but we're not constrained. We may be perplexed sometimes, but we are not driven to despair. We may be persecuted, but we are not destroyed. Always, Paul says, carrying around in our bodies the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifest in our bodies. For we who live are constantly being given up to death. And the trials that we experience feel like that. But Jesus says we do it for the sake of Christ, so that the life of Christ may be manifested and revealed in our mortal bodies. So the psalmist declares that those who sow in tears will reap rejoicing. And so, Liz, we just want to say to you tonight, rejoicing is coming. You just hold on. There is nothing impossible with God. Jesus said we could speak to the mountain and say, be thou removed and cast into the sea, with just a mustard seed of faith. But more than that, we have a God who said he'll never leave us. He'll never forsake us. So we just need to stay strong, stay faithful, and know that no matter what, God is in control.
If I'm in a crowd, if I'm alone, in the streets or in my home, I've got to live the life I sing about in my song, every day, everywhere, on a busy thoroughfare. Folks may stop me, some may watch me, say I'm foolish, but one thing and then live another. Be saved by day and a devil undercover. I got to live the life I sing about in my song. Oh, in my song.
Yeah.